Hey everyone, Tom Campbell here. I'm a former admissions officer from College of the Holy Cross and Pomona College, and I currently work full-time with Ethan at College SA Guy as our community manager. I'm here to talk to you today about a term called institutional priorities, or as we call them in the biz, IPs, and how they factor into the college admission process, particularly at more selective schools, and what you can do about it. Let's get into it. Okay, institutional priorities. Have you even heard of this term before? It's something that's so fundamental to so many different highly selective colleges, and yet it's something that's not really talked about a ton in the admission landscape. A lot of the areas that students and families focus on, understandably, are your grades, the courses that you've taken in high school, the letters of advocacy and recommendation from your school, from your counselor, from teachers, essays, your activities. And while these application components provide you a lot of opportunity to describe yourself to these colleges, there are many conversations that are happening behind the scenes or behind the curtain at these schools. Yes, people will be talking about you. The best way to think about institutional priorities are that they are the directives that are passed down from a college's leadership to their admissions team. Back when I worked in admissions, I couldn't just wake up every day and be like, you know what, today is the day that I'm going to admit all of the unicorn writers. Because A, unicorns aren't real, at least I don't think they are, but how cool would it be if they were? And B, and more importantly, it's not up to an individual admissions officer's preferences that certain students are admitted to the school or not. Each year, admissions teams at selected colleges meet together during the beginning of their reading cycle, and they're given a list of priorities and preferences that are going to influence why certain students are admitted and other students are not. These institutional priorities are formulated and designed by the leadership at the college. Folks like the president of the college, the board of trustees, perhaps faculty might have a say in these priorities as well, and they essentially are a long laundry list of very specific things that they're hoping for the admissions team to be able to keep an eye out for as they start to read through applications. Oftentimes, even if a student is so talented, has the best grades with the most challenging courses available in their high school, they've been involved in tons of different clubs and organizations, and they're the president of National Honor Society, and they've done 1,000 hours of service work, these areas of achievement in highly selective schools are actually more common than sometimes students and families realize. These colleges are getting thousands of applications from students all over the world who are achieving amazing things in their own communities. And you have a lot to be proud of for that. However, when these application pools are so highly qualified, and there's so many students who could theoretically slot right in, attend that school, and do very well, admissions officers need to ground their rationale and their argument as to why a student needs to be admitted and root their argument in the institutional priorities that they've been told by their college to keep an eye out for. Sometimes in talking with your college counselor, you may have a sense for whether or not you meet certain priorities at certain schools, and other times you really may not know whether or not there are certain attributes, interests that you've developed, or qualities about you that a certain college is really keeping an eye out for in that particular application cycle that year. So what even is an IP? Wouldn't it be kind of cool if your eyes could pee? I mean, I guess they do, and that's called tears. All right, here's a non-exhaustive list of some common institutional priorities that you may find at different selective colleges and universities. Recruited athletes. Many highly selective colleges have impressive athletic teams, whether they're Division I, Division III, Division 9 3/4. So recruited athletes are essentially students who have been given priority admission to a college and go through a pre-read process that will vary from school to school. But essentially what this is a student will reach out to a coach for a particular sport or team that they're interested in playing and get a sense from that coach as to whether or not their position or their talent or skill level is up to par and as a match for the needs of that particular team that year. Institutional priorities can be very fluid, so this will change from year to year. So for example, say the coach of the soccer team is like, hey, all of our star forwards are studying abroad in Budapest, and we are hungry, see what I did there? For players to fit that particular position. In that particular cycle and year, forwards on the soccer team are a more prioritized position at the college. If you are an athlete and you're interested in playing in college, especially on the varsity level, it's a great idea to start having conversations with coaches well before your application cycle. So hopefully you're watching this as possibly a sophomore, maybe a junior in high school. Recruited athletes still have the academic foundation and ability to be successful and do great things at these colleges. However, having this extra element of talent that they bring to the table is something that's going to tip the needle for them in the admission process at that school. Legacies. Every college will define and evaluate this differently, but essentially legacy students are those that oftentimes have one or more parent or guardian who attended that particular college. So for example, I would have been considered a legacy student at Westfield State University, my mom's alma mater. Go Owls! At certain schools, simply having a parent that attended that school before you is going to give you a bump in that admission process. And at other schools, it's not a factor at all. Some schools may only consider you to be a legacy if your parent attended on the undergraduate level, so say they got their bachelor's degree, or you may also be considered a legacy if they went for their master's, PhD, or some other degree that I can't think of right now. Development cases. At many schools, there is a process behind the scenes where certain students are targeted and identified in an application pool who may come from a family that has the capacity to donate substantial amounts of money to the school, which of course means that the college is able to continue to run their amazing departments, programs, provide financial aid to students. So for many schools, this is the reality of creating the endowment that allows them to sustain themselves. Typically, the more highly selective a school gets, the less concerned they are with factoring in development cases into their process. But again, it depends. Another population that bring a very powerful perspective and yet haven't always had as much of a seat at the table at selective colleges are those who are the first generation in their family to attend college. This is another example of a population that many college admissions offices are going to be proactive around identifying, recruiting, and providing support for on their various campuses. Artists, musicians, thespians, and dancers. I've been told I can bust a move or two. However, in order to typically meet an institutional priority for artistic talent, many colleges will offer opportunities for you to submit a portfolio of your artistic work, whether that's visual, performing, or otherwise, so that way faculty on their staff can review it and let the admissions team know which folks have the talent or fit for the particular offerings that are at that college. So you may be some kind of like Stevie Nicks tambourine guru and pro. You probably don't know who Stevie Nicks is, but you should look her up. But that might not be a fit for a particular college's orchestra or music ensembles. Geographic diversity. Colleges oftentimes have an applicant pool that spans the entire world. However, there's usually a higher number of students that are coming from the college's own local area. So the state that college is located in, perhaps the region immediately around it. You can often be given more points in the school's process or a little more of a bump if you come from a less commonly seen state or area or country. Sometimes a student's gender can be an institutional priorities at certain schools. For example, at many highly selective STEM-based schools, women are often underrepresented in those application pools. And many colleges actually will put on programs and initiatives to attract more women in STEM. On the flip side, y'all, I'm too millennial for this. Many small liberal arts colleges have a higher number of women than men in their application pool. It's always important to remember that all of the insights that I'm saying are different from college to college to college. A lot of these are just hypothetical examples, although I think we can all agree that we need more tambourine in our lives. Another common priority that doesn't get spoken about a lot is undersubscribed academic interests. People will log into the Google or the Facebook or now the TikTok and will search for best programs for computer science. Out will come a list of colleges, many of them highly selective schools that have great computer science programs. But the other side of the coin is that everyone who is interested in those is also going to know that they're great. And so what you have is two layers of competition. A, the school is already so hard to get into to begin with, regardless of your academic program. And B, you're now seeking after the most highly selective program at that highly selective college. So at many schools, students who have documented and identified talent throughout their high school career of an academic area that is less commonly seen in their application pool. So say, for example, philosophy or the arts. At one of my previous institutions, when I first started working there, politics was an area that really wasn't as commonly seen in the application pool. But then, after the 2016 election, many students started to pay more attention to politics and be more invested in having their voice be represented in our political system. So politics kind of became less rare and less uncommon in the application pool, and therefore there were other areas that were given a little more love. Now, after hearing this non-exhaustive list, you may be thinking to yourself, that's it, I'm out. This is never gonna work for me. Please don't think that. College is an amazing and transformative experience, and especially if you find the best fit school for you and a place where you can thrive and find your people and find your niche. Regardless if that's at a highly selective school or not, if you want to go to college and you want to have that experience to live and learn alongside amazing people, you can have it. But what I do hope this information provides to you is some perspective. Students will often say to me, what did I do wrong? Why wasn't I admitted? And it will break my heart. As an admission officer, I would often go online to different message forums and popular platforms where students would talk about applying to particular colleges. And I would see the things that students would write about their weaknesses in their file or the reasons that they weren't admitted. And almost always, the things that students thought were flaws in themselves were absolutely not something that was mentioned in their file. It can be hard to wrestle with the reality and the fact that there are many elements outside of your control that are going to influence why certain students are admitted and other students are not. It doesn't have anything to do with how smart you are, how talented you are, or have any marker on your worth and value as a person. It's important to remember that oftentimes these priorities are completely outside of your control. They're not usually also public knowledge. Many times students and families will ask me, well, how do I find out about these priorities? Colleges are often wary to be super transparent and public with all these priorities because A, they're concerned that maybe certain students will try to craft applications to fit an image of what they think that college wants. And B, these priorities are constantly shifting from year to year. So if they publish online in 2022 that they're low on bassoon players, they may be getting a flood of those the next year, when in reality what they really need is the trombone. Now I have to go look up what the bassoon and the trombone sound like. It's also important to know that as you start high school and you're like, my dream is to attend insert highly selective, or as we call them, highly rejective college. I want to know exactly what they want so I can build my whole high school life and identity around what that college wants. Please, do not do this. High school is such an important time to make incredible connections with your peers, to help really find yourself and to find the areas that you're curious about, the questions that you want to address, the issues that you want to solve, and to build and craft a narrative that you think is just going to impress this random person on the other end, someone like me, who you may or may not ever get the chance to meet, is 4 years of your life that you might look back on and regret. It's also important to note that some of these priorities that I mentioned are only really super important at these more highly selective colleges. Out of the roughly 2,800 four-year colleges in the United States, only 60 of them are considered highly selective. And when I say highly selective, I mean that they have less than a 30% acceptance rate. Because generally, once you start to get to that point, that's the tipping point where many colleges are going to be factoring in some or many of these priorities, or other priorities that I haven't mentioned, into the fold. These 60 colleges represent only 2% of US colleges and universities. 2%. So if you end up being part of the 98%, I guarantee you, life will be what you make it.